Welcome to Vegetarian for Life cooking demonstration. I'm Chef Justina and we support all the vegetarians and vegans. And today I will show you how to make some lovely treats for your afternoon tea, garden picnic, or anything else, which is finger food. So let me start by introducing our vegan baking guide. So this is one of the resources you can find on our website, V for Life or vegetarianforlife.org.uk, and you can have lovely recipes in here. And one of the recipes I will show you will be scones. So without any further ado, let's start making our scones. So today I'm going to make something a bit more different. So you might already know how to make regular flavored scones, but have you ever considered scones flavored with cranberries and cinnamon? So first of all, most important part is having really cold frozen margarine or vegan butter. So I'm gonna just grab that from the fridge. All right, so really cold, that's our case. So especially margarine kind of melts in the sort of warmer temperatures. So want to add it as cold as possible, so straight from the fridge, and I'm avoiding touching it too much with my warm hands. Especially warmer weather, you really need to work quickly. So if you have warm hands like mine, there's a trick for you. Using butter knives. So what I'm gonna do, just use this style of cutting the butter or margarine which you use in here. So I'm just sliding a knife next to each other and just making them into breadcrumbs. So what I want to achieve is this breadcrumb consistency. So just going all the way one way and then turning the bowl and moving the other way. Might be a little bit messy if you work very fast or your bowl is a bit small. Just helping to start to break up that margarine you're using. What I have done, I made sure they are cut up the margarine in the smallest pieces I can, and then make sure it's nice and cold. So you can already see it's starting to turn a little bit more like a breadcrumb consistency. So it will be safe to put our hands in there when we are very close to not having any big lumps. So you might think of, oh, well, that's quite boring because it's just cranberries, not as if you changed up much. But you can be as creative as you like. Those of different additions you can do. You can even have different fillings like stewed apples in there and cinnamon. Once again, you can add additions such as butternut squash, perhaps some vegan cheese as well in the middle. Also, from savory to sweet, we have a lot of ideas. So lemon and blueberry, that sounds like a different sort of scone than you would normally have. So do try sort of making them a bit different, even serving with perhaps blueberry compote instead of regular jam, just to change things up a little bit. So as you see, I'm just rubbing it with my hands really quickly. You want to have this breadcrumb consistency, but I still want this to be quite cold. So another trick you could do, even placing your flour in the fridge. Obviously not for too long. We don't want it to have too much moisture, but obviously just to cool it off and help out. So as soon as I see it's almost done, most of the big lumps are done, gonna add my cranberries and sugar in here. So any flavoring you add it now. Also a bit of cinnamon, just a little bit of spice. You might actually think it smells a bit like Christmas when it's baking, but it's just one of those sweet additional aromas. Having cranberries make it a little bit more savory, so you just have an idea that they're a bit zingy. So if you're not a fan of sort of biting into something a bit savory, add less cranberries. So I see everything is incorporated. Now we'll add my plant milk. So any plant milk you have. So what I'm gonna do, not to overwork this, just mixing that around. Make sure it's starting to stick together. So as you see, I didn't add all of it straight away because depending how well everything sort of gets mixed in. So it's easier to add extra than take it out. So let's just work that slowly and add a little bit more. Once again, I'm just mixing it together, making sure it starts to stick. And as soon as I can already start forming lovely ball and there's less sort of flour in the bottom of the bowl, I can tip that out and work it on the surface. So just working that around. You might consider as afternoon tea as an event in your care home. That would be a great idea if you're looking to increase perhaps hydration or a theme for activities. So one of those things you can involve people in doing is making scones. They don't have to sort of bake them together. They just make a mixture, perhaps have different flavor toppings, have different things people just add on, and then obviously make their own flavor and then bake and perhaps enjoy with a cup of tea for afternoon tea. Once again, something like decorating buntings, making their own decorations for afternoon tea, such as even cake stands. They don't really have to be cake stands made from wood or plates. It could be from cardboard, just to enjoy decorating, perhaps drawing some nice patterns on there as well. Once again, if you're considering something like having cloth napkins, you can be knitting them all together or perhaps just decorating them, whatever you feel is most suitable. Of course, one of those things which you can include dancing, which doesn't have to be dancing, could be even moving towards the music sort of rhythm, which it could be adapted to anybody's needs, which is a great idea, just something a bit different. Obviously, if you are after a picnic sort of style, perhaps you have outside table and you can bring a picnic blanket and put it on top of the table, which might sound strange, but it creates a little bit of different atmosphere. So I see my little ball is really quite nice. So it's still a bit of things try to fall off, but I don't want to keep pushing that. So what are we going to do? It's a little bit loose, it means it will be nice and fluffy and crumbly when it cooks. So I have this large cutting ring. So I'm just going to shape that and make sure my ball is as high as a cutting ring. So you can have 2 to 3 scones out of this and just slicing it through. So don't want to be playing too much with this. So just getting that out. And then I'm going to flip it upside down. Might be quite strange, but all the flakiness might flake off. So I have prepared a baking tray. So baking tray with the sheet goes there. And then let's just squish that together, not playing too much, just pushing it all together. And then once again, we can cut one more big one. And then slightly come out. Just finishing shaping the top and then placing that on the tray. And last one, just getting all the leftover goodness and berries in here. And then using help of the ring, just shaping into a shape. So it might be not a full one, maybe a taster, the smaller one. So just shaping it all together and pops out like that. So next we're gonna brush it with any plant milk you have. It's an optional sort of step, so you don't have to do that. So what are we gonna do? Just gonna wash my hands very quickly. So we're gonna add any plant milk you have, so just a little dash on the top, and you don't even have to have any brush or anything, just smearing that on the top. So just a little bit, perhaps using a finger or even a knife, just to spread it out would help to brown a little bit. So it's just one of those things, just brushing that around. And then these are ready to go in the oven, 200 degrees for 20 minutes. Okay, lovely. Let's tidy this up a little bit. We're gonna be making more pastry, so I'm not completely gonna clean that off. So use of a ring, I'm sort of using to scrape off extra flour off and any sort of stuck up pastry in there. There we go. That's nice and clean. Okay, so next we're gonna prepare our coronation no chicken pastries. So to start with, we're gonna do the filling because it needs to cool ideally for a couple of minutes before we can use that. So just turning that on, and then gonna fry our chicken style pieces. So it's up to you what you use. One brand has vegan chicken pieces, but ideal size. If you can't get your hands on that, you might need to buy another brand. Other brands might come up chunkier, so you might need to defrost the chicken pieces to sort of just chop them up in sort of smaller sizes, because we will be placing those in the pastry. So something ideal you can actually have if you have a nice stack of cakes and sandwiches and perhaps pastries in there. Also really good if you want planning a picnic basket or garden style picnic where you perhaps using nice plates but you still have a blanket, or still using reusable sort of paper plates, just to kind of make it a little bit different atmosphere. So these are ideal eating with your hands, nice and easy. So start by cooking our chicken style pieces. And really nice and simple. Just a dash of oil in there, just to brown this. And there's also loads of different ideas you can look up. Obviously, if you're planning afternoon tea style gathering, perhaps checking what people like. So perhaps making different recipes and asking people to vote for the recipes they would prefer. Have a look at something called tea dancing. That's another sort of interesting idea you can sort of adapt in your care home. Obviously, if you're an individual and looking into some ideas for your own garden party, do not forget that tea garden parties sort of happen in all weathers. So even if it's really, really hot, don't cancel your party. Just change things up. Perhaps having less warm things, so just having iced coffees, iced teas, perhaps ice cream, or anything like cooler for the weather. Just sort of impress perhaps your guests by being creative and just cool everybody off a little bit if it's time of heat wave. So just keeping an eye on this, making sure it's nice and brown. Well, so that looks really nice. Couple more minutes. So another tip for you, perhaps you look into saving electricity. So I see the pieces are cooked, but I just want a little bit more brown on that. You're going to switch it off and leave a residue heat to cook the rest of the chicken pieces. So here we go. Just cooking all the way through. So while it's still browning, we can start mixing our main mixture. So we're going to use this bowl and we're going to add raisins. So if you're not a fan of raisins, feel free to exclude them. Perhaps replace them with a little bit more of mango chutney. So one of the key ingredients is mango chutney. It's really nice and yellow. Also a bit of sweetness and a little bit of savory. Just sort of mixing a little bit of different flavors in here. Then we're going to use vegan mayonnaise, which is a key ingredient. Obviously, if you're considering to adding less of that, it's not a problem. You might need to reduce amount of spices. So it's just one of those things. If you leave out too much of this mayonnaise, your mixture will be really dark. So what I'm using curry powder and turmeric. Just a little bit of turmeric, otherwise it will be really yellow. Just putting that in there. And then sort of starting to mix our lovely yellow mixture. And then additional, so if you don't have any fresh coriander, and obviously a lot of people might be discouraged buying fresh coriander because it comes in massive bunches, and you have to keep it in the fridge in water, or otherwise it might wilt. Another thing, you can chop it up and put it in your freezer. And then you just defrost it as you go, as you cook, and add it on there. So my coriander is defrosted, and there's no shame in that. Nowadays, you can buy loads of different frozen herbs, just putting straight in there, and then mixing that up. So you already can see really nice mixture coming, really nice and yellow. So you're just now considering, do you want to add more mayonnaise? Is this a bit too yellow for you? So then just mixing that in. And then when it's nice and done, leaving our chicken pieces to cool a little bit. And then I can show you other ways you can now make pastries. So as I said, we're still going to be using this space, just moving a couple of things out of the way. And let's work with our pastry whilst our chicken style piece is cool. So I'm using block of pastry. So this is puff pastry. Most of them actually in shops are nowadays vegan. Obviously, do have a look. All butter pastries will also have butter. but do have a look before you purchase. This size is ideal because you can roll it out as thick as you like. Obviously, already rolled pastry is an option for a quicker, little bit less messy method, but this one you can roll out as thick as you like. So what I'm going to start with a dusting of flour in here. So we don't want it to get stuck, and you might need to redust as you go. Obviously, higher you sprinkle off, a little bit better coverage you get. And then I'm gonna have this, I'm gonna start rolling it. So I have a little bit of flour on this side and just placing it here. So what we want to do is still just come out of the fridge like 20 minutes before rolling. So make sure it's not fridge cold. It's a little bit more towards the room temperature, but not too warm once again. So you have to time it. So one of the things when rolling, you want to just go this movement. I think it's quite easy just to sort of dance around in the kitchen, but what we want to do, just ideal, keeping that pastry quite square. So what we're going to do is I'm going to call it warming up the pastry. So I'm not rolling straight away, not getting straight away into it. I'm going to sort of warm it up, just going to press it gently where I will be rolling towards the direction. So pastry is less stressed. So it's just rolling out, just sort of getting used to what it will be like. Also, can just turn it around. Make sure you're still using the dusting of the flour so it doesn't get stuck. Once again, warming up the other side as well. And then we can slowly start rolling. And if you roll it straight away, it's not a problem, but you might have more splits in the pastry, which is not ideal. So once again, now I'm gonna turn it around and then gonna start rolling it. So what we want to avoid is rolling off the edge. That will create this lip, which is not ideal. But we want to turn it around, make sure it's still nice and floury. And once again, just rolling it. So just keeping nice and square. Obviously, you can go just one way and then completely lift up the rolling pin if that's easier, or go all the way there and rolling it back. So once again, try not to slip off, and then you have quite a thick sheet. So remember, this will puff up quite a lot. So I'm gonna roll one more time, and then we'll see how thick that looks. So it's quite still thicker than the one you would have already rolled. If you measure with perhaps a butter knife, so like as one like two butter knives together, perhaps that would be the size to give you an idea. So what do we want to do now? I'm gonna take a smaller knife and then gonna cut it up. So what I want to do, just make them as possible, like sort of making like a rectangular shape. So just share that in half and then kind of cutting that in half again. Once again, depending on the size of your pastries. If you want to have a big pastry and be proud of it, want to have a small one and a little bit more neat when you eat it, just having an idea of what you add. Obviously, fillings don't have to be coronation chicken style pieces. It could be anything else you like. So what are we going to do now? So we have these rectangular sheets. So what are we going to do? We're going to take our knife and then we're going to score all around it. What are we going to keep? There's two corners intact and the other corners will be cut all the way through. Might be a bit tricky when I say it that way, but let me show you. So obviously, we'll show it on here, just nice and safe, cutting it a straight line and then lifting off the knife. So keeping, let's say, your pinky size sort of corner in here still intact. So don't cut your finger, make sure there's enough space, and then you're cutting the other line. In this case, we're just turning the pastry and cutting all the way through. Now remembering that we have that pinky sort of size gap there, and then cutting it all the way through to the next corner. So what we end up having is something like that. So we have pastry, which is disconnected here, and still connected in these corners. So because it's quite warm, it will start to be very doughy. So what we want to achieve now, just folding it really nicely, one way and the other. So just sort of gently press it together, make more space. This is the bit where your filling will go. So more space it is, more filling you can add. So, and having like that. So then you can brush with any sort of plant milk you have, and then just goes on the tray. And you can do the same with other one. Obviously, there's different ways you can do that. If you're perhaps using frozen berries, you can just add frozen berries in the center, pop it in the oven, And voila, that's done. Really nice and easy if you don't want to be making cakes or scones. So mentioning that, I will check them in right now. All right, another couple, at least 5 minutes. So they cook really nice and fluffy. They're already risen quite a lot. So let's hope they will just look lovely when they come out. So since this cooled, we will add it in our bowl with mayonnaise. Obviously not gonna make you wait for scones and for the pastries. I have made pastries in advance, so I will just show you how they should look like when they are done. So just adding that on, and then gonna heat the pan again for our next recipe. So just mixing that up, and then what we want to just see how well it covers. So if you're not a fan of mayonnaise, you could perhaps add some yogurt in there to make it a little bit healthier if you like, or divide it by 15-50. It's up to you. So just mixing that up. So it looks like this. And when your pastries come out of the oven, they should look like that. So these have been brushed with a little bit of plant milk, so you can see a little bit browner right there. Or you can have a larger one. So it might be a bit trickier. So ideally, you want to serve them as soon as your guests arrive, so they don't sit on the plate for too long, because the mixture is quite moist. Ideally, you can add them in, put them in the fridge, and serve it next day, so it's nice and cool. But it still will be a lot of moisture. Might be a bit too much for the pastry. So if you serve it very soon, you can just eat it straight away. But if you leave it in the fridge or sitting on the table, you might need cutlery. So something to consider if you're planning this in advance. And then we just want to add it straight in the middle. And then obviously as much filling as you can add, because it tastes amazing. So just gonna add that in. Once again, as I mentioned, perhaps you want to do a mushroom filling or add any other filling in there, even if sweet one perhaps. Fill it with cream if you like, anything you like, because this pastry is flavorless, so you have to flavor it. So leave that on the side. There, looks lovely. Obviously on top a little bit of fresh coriander, and here we go. That's ready. So it could be a really small snack. You can even make little bit tiny cases and have 1 or 2 chicken pieces in there, and then just have it that way. So now we're gonna make a salad. So there's gonna be a pasta salad. So one of those things we have to cook is vegetarian or vegan sausages. Some of them say vegetarian, but actually are vegan. So do have a look on ingredients. So I'm using the ones which used to be frozen. So they don't have outside casing. So do have a look how to cook the sausages. Most of them will say cook them in the oven. That will be ideal. These are suitable for frying pan. So I'm gonna just chop them up in smaller pieces and then fry them off. It's up to you. You can make them even smaller if you prefer. And then just getting a little bit of color. Obviously, you can cook them in advance and serve them cold or warm, just one of those things. So I have prepared a bowl with a sour spinach. So spinach is ideal for iron and vitamin K and vitamin C, just ideal. If you're thinking, what salad I should add? Spinach would be your #1 salad you want to add in every salad you make this summer. And then we have this cooked pasta. Looks like rice, so it's called orzo salad. So salad with orzo pasta. So it looks like sort of really small, so it's really pleasant to eat in the salad. So it's not really chunky or falling apart. Really good. So what I've done, I cooked the pasta in advance. I put it under cold water straight away, and then you can leave it in the fridge if you like. Just one of those things. Make sure it's dry before you add it into your salad. Just cooking that off. Just a little bit of color. Once again, I'm happy with the color. Just turning off the heat. Cooks off a little bit further whilst we prepare our other ingredients. So in this case, we're going to use cucumber. Obviously, this salad, feel free to use anything you like. It could be cucumbers, bean sprouts, you name it, you can add it in the salad. Just in half and in little quarters. So adding colors. So once again, think about what colors you have in your fridge or what else you can add. Perhaps having red peppers or yellow peppers. Yeah, we already have a lot of green in here. So just think what you can add. So now we're going to add red pepper in here as well. So I just like to cut that in half and take the seeds out by hand. And obviously there's a lot of different versions how you can do this. So just having that and then shaking the rest of the seeds out and then reserving the side. And then I'm just gonna score that. So just gonna make it really nice and easy and make just little scores and then just in the sort of in the finger style. So it's ideal if you're planning some dips perhaps, such as hummus or guacamole, and just want to chop it up some sticks to dip them in. That's just perfect. And obviously use cucumbers and celeries. Perhaps this new addition of for your afternoon tea or a garden picnic sort of style. Once again, finger foods, that's the theme. So adding all the peppers in here. All right, so let's check on our scones so they don't get too brown. All right, nice and ready. All right, so just to pop them on the plate very quickly so I don't get my hands burnt. Okay, so nice and ready. So I will leave it to cool a little bit, but they look like this already. So really nice. So what we want to achieve is when we take them out of the oven, leave maybe a couple of minutes to cool, and then what you want to take them, or do apologize, and tap the bottom. Really nice and hollow, just sort of empty, really dull noise. That's what you want to achieve when it's cooked perfectly. So it doesn't have to be completely brown on the top. As far as you have here that amazing tapping noise, really dull, almost empty inside, that's the sign. So leave them on the side to cool. Finishing off our salad. So just gonna add our sausages in here. Now it's up to you. Feel free to add any tomatoes in here. Another addition could be added into our lovely coronation chicken style pastries. They're adding tomatoes as well, extra color, extra flavor, just one of those things. Of course, it has a little bit of water in there. So once again, if you're thinking of leaving the pastries on the side for a little bit longer, you might want to exclude the tomatoes. So now the best thing, making your own dressing, because all of us might have quite a few half-empty bottles in the fridge, and perhaps you didn't like the taste, perhaps it's not for the occasion. The best thing, making your own dressing, is just one of those things you can do at any point. So I have added extra virgin olive oil in here. So I'm using a jar. Make sure you have a lid for the jar before you start using it. Then I'm already thinking about what flavors I would like to have here. So I'm adding a little bit of garlic powder. If you prefer strong garlic, use fresh garlic. Then a little bit of onion powder. So just one of those things, really nice and sweet, almost caramelized flavor. Then adding balsamic vinegar. It's just for those who like the dressing on the sweeter side because it's quite sweet, also acidic. And then for the salt, you can add salt, or for a little bit of umami flavor, soy sauce. Just a dash of that. And then the most important part of shaking it. So the proper way of making that, obviously emulsifying oils and acids. But if you're really in a rush and perhaps you just want to serve the salad or just really hungry, you just have to do a little dance in the kitchen, just shake that up. And then it will be nice and ready. You can store that in the fridge as well for your next day salad. And that's ready. So obviously, more oil and more shaking, more whisking you add, the thicker it will get. So a little drizzle on the salad. So start with a little bit of drizzle and don't feel guilty. Some people say, I'm just gonna have it plain because it's healthier. But if that little bit of drizzle makes you to eat all bowl of salad, it's so worth it. So what are we gonna do? I'll take a large spoon, and then we don't want to smash all vegetables, especially we have this delicate spinach. We just want to sort of turn it around. We're just covering in this dressing. We're not completely smashing all our vegetables to release all the juices. Ideally should be served as soon as possible when you add the dressing. Because of the salt, a lot of vegetables will start to release water. So it's just one of those things. We just want to serve it as soon as possible. And then look at that. Very lovely colors, and has pasta in here. Once again, add anything you like in there. And we can serve that with our pastry. So slowly building our little bit of garden picnic plate. So just adding that in there. So if you're not a fan of meat replacements, such as we use sausages or chicken pieces, for chicken style pieces, you can use chickpeas. Or for the salad, you can even exclude the sausage and have anything else in there, as well as any of the beans, perhaps butter beans, because they're really nice and big. You could fry them in the pan to get a little bit of color. So that's our first plate, nice and ready. Perhaps it's for two if you're not feeling that hungry. So next, I'm going to show you how to make very quick cashew nut cream. So I have soaked my cashews in a glass of hot water. So something, it's optional. So when you soak cashews, they become really nice and creamy. For this recipe, you don't have to, but I prefer to. So I have soaked them in boiling water for around an hour, or you can soak them overnight. So let me drain them very quickly. So what I have done, I drained them and had a little bit of water to run through them just to cool them a little bit and just wash off the rest of it. So what we're going to do, we're going to blend them. So I will prefer to use a small blender. Obviously, if you have a bigger one, you can make bigger quantities in one go. So we're going to use silken tofu. So if you're not familiar, silken tofu is the same as bean curd, just smoother, comes on the shelves in most supermarkets. Just have a look. Larger ones will likely to have them. So they're not stored in the fridge. So one of those things, it doesn't have flavor, so we have to add flavor, but it's really nice and creamy, silky if you like. So here we go, looks like that. And I'm gonna use half of this package. It's really convenient as well. You can buy in advance and store it in your cupboard until you decide that you fancy some homemade cream, and why not? So adding half of that, and then gonna add our cashews. So dropping those in. So make sure they're quite dry. If they're really wet, do leave them to drip for a bit longer. So adding all of those in. And then we're gonna flavor it. So adding a little bit of vanilla extract. If you're using vanilla extract, it normally has sugar in there. So you have to keep an eye how much extra sugar you add in there. So just adding a little bit of vanilla extract. And then it's up to you. I prefer using golden syrup. So golden syrup, it's a little bit more thicker than maple syrup, but feel free to use anything you have in your own cupboard. By just adding this in here. So keeping nice and thick. Another option is having your full fat coconut milk, which you normally might use for cooking, putting it in the fridge overnight ideally, and then opening the top, and will be quite thick layer of fat, as you call it. So you can scrape that up and whip it, and it will be like whipped cream, but really melts in your mouth. So you can have that instead, or mix them both together. So silken tofu has protein and is set in calcium, so it has calcium as well. So it's healthy cream. What can be better than a healthy cream? So adding that in here, and having a little bit of noise. So using my food processor. So I do apologize, be a bit noisy. So most pieces are already chopped up. So already see it a little bit getting smoother, but it will need a little bit longer until it is completely smooth and has no chunks. So increasing a little bit of speed and then doing it again. All right, that should be nice and smooth. So the longer you leave it, smoother it will get. So if you prefer a little bit of bite, so it's a little bit more different, feel free to add it quite chunky. Obviously, soaking the cashews helps out to grind them quite smoother and easier. So what we're gonna have, our beautiful scone in here, and then gonna serve some of this cream in a little ramekin. Feel free to cut it in half. You can see how thick it is. It's still nice and thick. So silken tofu really holds the nuts together. Another thing, if you put it in the fridge, so it's currently quite room temperature. Silken tofu is at in room temperature. Our cashews have been soaking in the warm water. So if you put it in the fridge for a little bit, it will even get thicker. So don't be afraid to add a dash of plant milk, a dash of plant cream, anything you like to make it easier to blend. To have an idea that it will thicken it up a little bit more. So feel free to dust it with a little bit of icing sugar, and that's ready to serve with our lovely cream. So obviously enjoy your afternoon tea. Do whatever it takes to make you do that afternoon tea, and just perhaps impress some people with some lovely plant-based recipes. So it just shows how that vegans don't have to miss out on afternoon tea, and it's just as simple to make as any other tea. So please try the recipes. Obviously, let us know how it did go. Obviously, if you like what we do, please give us a like and please subscribe on our YouTube channel. And of course, ring that bell button to see the videos first. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Take care then. Bye-bye.